and welcome back to Get the Book, the channel that helps you read more and hopefully read better. Now, one statement that I get to hear from people more often than not is that I'd like to start reading and I can even make the time, but I just don't know where and how to begin. So if you're one of those individuals who feel lost on how to start their reading journey, then this video is for you. This video will help you get started the right way. Here are my top 10 practical tips on how to start reading. Tip number 1, selecting the right genre. Now, the very first step in starting your reading journey is to select the right genre. Most people get this wrong, and as a result, it puts them off from the habit of reading altogether. So let me help you out. Books usually fall under two categories, fiction and non-fiction. And these categories can be further subdivided into different genres. So let me give you a list of what comes under fiction. You have action and adventure, you have sci-fi, you have fantasy fiction, you have romance, comedy and rom-com, horror, suspense and thrillers. What else? You have historic fiction, you have fable and folklores, short stories and poetry, classics, graphic novels, and detective and mystery. I don't know if I mentioned that. All in all, there are 13 categories that can come under fiction. Just like fiction, non-fiction too has a list of subcategories or genres such as autobiographies, biographies, memoirs, self-help books, true crime, essays, research and academic papers, as well as areas of interest books such as like gardening, sports, cookbooks, and so on. So this would fall under the subcategory of non-fiction. Now, if you want examples of the different books for each fiction and non-fiction and the subcategories, I will leave a few links below that will give you these examples, which will help you understand this realm a lot better. Now, don't be frightened by this very long list of genres that I've given you. Selecting a genre is actually quite simple. It completely depends on what you're interested in. Whatever you fancy is where you should start with. So if you like sports, maybe start with a biography or an autobiography of your favorite sports person. If you like romance, then maybe start with something by Nicholas Sparks. If you like to travel, then maybe something by Pico Iyer is where you should begin with. And if you like poetry, then maybe give Rupi Kaur a chance. There is no right or wrong answer. It completely depends on what you fancy. But before you start, I would say do a little digging within yourself and try to understand what you would like to read. And once you have found out what that particular genre or area of interest is, go there. Tip number 2, don't follow the #herd mentality. The second most common mistake that people make is to pick out a book that's trending. Please don't go out and pick out a book just because people are talking about it on social media and you're getting a sense of FOMO. Chances are that these people have not really read the book themselves. Now, it could be a circumstance that a book has just released and is topping the literary charts and is definitely a brilliant book worth reading, and that's why people are raving about it on social media. But just because it's on the bestsellers list, that doesn't mean that it will appeal to you personally. When starting out your reading journey, it's important to start with books that you find interesting. The genre and the premise has to appeal to you. When you start by reading books that are on the bestsellers list, you end up wasting a lot of time and money that can easily be invested in a book that might actually have a lasting impact on you. By all means, please go and take a look at the bestsellers list. However, pick out a book only because it speaks to you for you and not because it's trending on social media. Tip number 3, start with short stories. Now, this particular tip helped me tremendously in my own personal reading journey. Once I had selected a genre that I liked, I started to read short stories in that particular genre. I went from reading one short story to another, to collection of short stories, to large autobiographies, to now having my own booktube channel. That's the power of a short story. What works with short stories is that it packs in a punch with limited text and gives the reader the ability to develop the habit of moving from one piece of content to another without really having to invest a large number of hours in one story. Another great thing about short stories is that it helps readers experiment with different kinds of genres before they actually pick out a favorite. What's more, there are tons of short stories available on the internet for free from some of the best writers. That's right. A quick Google search will give you access to some of the most incredible pieces of literature that have ever been created without you having to invest even a single penny in it. Once you have picked out your genre, start with short stories. And if I was to give you a recommendation of a short story, it would be this book. Dust on the Mountain, Collected Short Stories by Ruskin Bond. Now, there is no better writer than Mr. Bond to help you spark your imagination through short stories. Tip number 4. Download the free ebook sample before you actually purchase the book. All online booksellers now give buyers the option to download the free ebook version of any book that they are interested in. This ebook sample can be viewed on your smartphone, so it's not like you need a Kindle or anything. Since this option has come out, there is not a single purchase that I've made without downloading the ebook first. The reason is because it really helps me get an understanding of the structure of the book, the language that is used, the flow, just a sense of the narrative so that I can make an informed investment. You know that line that they say, always try before you buy? Well, that doesn't really have to apply just to clothes or shoes. It can apply to books as well. Now, this free sample is especially beneficial for new readers or beginners so that they can make an informed decision. They can get an understanding of whether they like the language, whether they don't like it, and you know what's to come. There is a sense of disappointment that most beginners actually get when they've made a purchase and they realize that they don't really like the book, or the language is so ornate that they can't really grasp the meaning. And this can easily be mitigated with the free sample. Now, whether you are a beginner or a voracious reader, I would say that before you make a purchase, be sure to go through the free ebook version of every book. Tip number 5. Do not get intimidated by the volume of a book. One thing I hear from a lot of people is that they are afraid to read a book or will not read the book at all because they are intimidated by the volume or the number of pages. Please do not fall into the trap of belief that thinner books are easier to read while larger volume books can take forever. There are a number of examples that I can give you of books that are more than 300 pages but are an absolute breeze to read, and so many books that are less than 100 pages but just take forever to finish and understand if you're lucky enough to finish it at all. Now, if you like a particular genre and you've seen the free ebook sample and you believe that you might actually enjoy that literature, then I would say go out and get the book. Do not judge it by the number of pages. I'm sure you will easily finish it. Now, a juxtapose that I can give you for this particular tip is Girl, Woman, Other, which is 452 pages, and The Country Without a Post Office, which is merely 85 pages. Now, you might think that I would have finished this easily and this would have been an uphill task, but it's actually the contrary. So it's actually the content of a book that makes it easier or harder to read and not the number of pages. So next time you fancy a book but it seems like it's on the larger side in terms of volume, I would say take a leap of faith. It might surprise you. Tip number 6. Create a 5-page per day reading schedule. A structured schedule helps build healthy habits. And the habit of reading is like any other habit that you're trying to cultivate. So create a schedule and stick to it. Now my personal recommendation is 5 pages a day, because anything less than that doesn't have an impact, and anything more than that can be slightly intimidating for a beginner. 5 is the sweet spot, and I personally still use this method for books that I find difficult to read. I'll give you an example. The History of Modern India by Bipin Chandra is a book that I've been trying to read for years. I would start and stop, and then I realized that this keeps happening because I personally am not used to reading academic history books. So I created a schedule of 5 pages per day and stuck to it, and within no time I finished the book. So you see that even voracious readers sometimes find it difficult or struggle to read certain books. The idea is to create a schedule, stick to it, and you will reach the end. I also like the 5 pages per day rule because reading 5 pages per day takes no time. In fact, it takes less time than actually watching one YouTube video or scrolling through Instagram before bedtime. So I'd say for those people who say they had no time to read, there's no excuse. Tip number 7, get a reading buddy. Just like having a gym buddy motivates you to hit the gym, having a reading buddy will motivate you to read more. The principle is exactly the same, accountability. When you have someone to answer to, you end up doing your best. And having a reading buddy will definitely help you when you're trying to get started off. Now, when you have someone to read with you, the benefit that's also there is that you have someone to discuss the book with. You know, if you are going through some tough periods, if you're not understanding something, you're there to help each other and encourage each other. And also, if your partner is doing their very best and you end up slacking, the sense of competition helps you to sort of go out there and do the needful. I personally am also using this principle right now. A friend of mine and I are reading Atomic Habits together, and she lives in a whole different part of the country. Now, FYI, having a reading buddy does not mean that you have to be in the same room at the same time. It means that both of you all have decided to read the same book within a predetermined time frame. Tip number 8, don't pressurize yourself with unrealistic goals. I see so many people give up on the habit of reading because they've actually developed some unrealistic goals and then pressurize themselves to achieve them. A person who isn't used to reading even a single book in a year suddenly comes up with this plan to read 1 book a week. Now, they will start out with a bang for the first couple of weeks, but when it starts to get difficult, they'll just abandon the habit completely and say that reading is a difficult habit to cultivate. It's actually not reading that's difficult, it's the goal that you've set yourself up to. Now, if you are not used to reading, I would suggest start by the 5 pages per day method, and read a few books a year. It doesn't have to be 48 books in a year. Reading is supposed to bring joy to your life and not stress. These unrealistic goals and comparing yourself to other individuals who read more only rob you of that joy. It's the process of reading, the literature that you enjoy, that's important. So I would say that, if it's just a book or 2 books in a year, that's fine too. And I would also say that reading is supposed to bring knowledge and the wealth of knowledge into your life. So it doesn't mean that it has to be from like 1, 2, 3 books a week. It could just be like 1, 2 or 3 books a year. As far as you keep going, set yourself up with realistic goals, try to achieve them. And you know what? Even if you fail at some of those easier goals, that's okay too. Just try again. Tip number 9, listen to audiobooks. I know there are many people out there who cannot read because of a disability. It could be a learning disability or a visual disability, but that doesn't mean that they should stop themselves from enjoying great literature. This is where audiobooks come in. Audiobooks are great for people who find it difficult to read or can't read, but they're also great for people who can read. These days, the audiobooks that are developed are exceptional. The background score is just mesmerizing, just very high quality audiobooks. And many a times the authors themselves end up narrating the book to you, which makes the experience of listening so much more richer. If I was to give you a recommendation for an audiobook to begin with, it would definitely be Alicia Keys's autobiography. The audiobook is enriched with her music, her piano playing, and guest readers like Michelle Obama, Oprah, Jay-Z, just to name a few. It'll definitely get you hooked onto audiobooks. I personally love Audible, and I think they have like an offer where the first couple of books or just the first book is free. So that's not such a bad deal. I would say give audiobooks a chance for sure. Tip number 10. Watch the movie first and then read the book. Now I know this is a very controversial statement coming from an avid reader, but trust me, this tip works great for beginners. Now once you've actually seen the movie, the reading experience of the book becomes a lot easier, especially for beginners. When you have an audiovisual aid that you've seen, it helps readers retain the story, the narrative, the character a lot better, and makes the process of understanding the story when you're reading it so much more easier and seamless. And because books actually have more details than the movies themselves, you get a lot more bang for your buck from the book itself. Additionally, what happens is that watching movies and then reading books gives readers the ability to visualize scenes and understand characters, just unlock their imagination when they are reading books for which movies have not been made. So it sort of gets you accustomed to the whole idea of it. I definitely use this tip myself. I used it for the Harry Potter series as well as for To Kill a Mockingbird, where I actually saw the movies first and then read the books. So I would say go watch the movie and then read the book, and I'm sure you won't be disappointed. So these were my top 10 practical tips to start reading. I can vouch for every single tip that I have shared with you. And if slowly but surely you move through all these steps, then I guarantee you that you will turn into a voracious reader in no time. If you have found my tips to be useful, please comment below and do let me know. And if you're looking for a book recommendation, well, that's why my channel is here. Do subscribe. Until next time, when I am back with another book recommendation and reading session, keep shining, keep smiling, and do stay safe.